Nursing is one of the fine arts. I had almost said the finest of fine arts. Special words by Florence Nightingale. And these words, I think it's fair to say, would embody Vilia's life work purpose. A death has occurred, and everything is changed by that event. We are painfully aware that life can never be the same, that yesterday is over, that relationships once rich have ended. But there is another way to look upon that truth. If life went on the same without the presence of the one who has died, we could only conclude that the life we remember made no contributions, filled no space, and meant nothing. The fact that the person left behind a place that cannot be filled is the highest tribute to that individual. Life can be the same after a trinket is lost, but never after the loss of a treasure. And though we must bravely face the fact of Vilia's death, we owe it to her and to ourselves to look at the bigger picture of her life, and that is choosing not to focus on how she died, but rather how she lived. My name is Colleen Kendall, and I'm personally honored to officiate the service of remembrance and tribute for Vilia Elizabeth Sadler. And today is Vilia's Day. However unwelcome and difficult to accept, paying tribute to her life and what she gave to each and every one of you here in very personal ways and left you with in very personal and different ways is only fitting. And to acknowledge that a special life and person has been lost in the physical sense, yet never of her larger than life spirit, soul, life energy, and great ability to extend herself to others. We are here to remember, share in, and pay tribute to Vilia's memories and life stories, and to view this day as a bittersweet opportunity to reflect with all positivity and respect on her life and learn from her life legacy. For everyone present here today, participating in Vilia's service, and from the UK, many others, and so many others that have had a unique and special connection and relationship with Vilia, whatever that may be, and only you know what influence she had on your lives. And so the journey of grieving while trying to come to an acceptance of her loss in the physical sense is very personal to each of you. And it is a sobering and important day when we stop to gather as we are here and bear witness to a person's life and time amongst us, the difference Vilia's living and dying has made among her family, friends, colleagues, innumerable patients, and so many others she traveled her life journey with, and to take the time to express immense sadness of her loss while still holding tight to our hope, our special memories, and solid belief in the cycle of life and appreciation for its continuance. We are mostly here for Ian, Vilia's brother, nieces Jane, Kirsten, Claire, and Ruth, other extended family members and friends who loved and embraced Vilia fully and all she had to offer as a woman, a dedicated nurse, and a person who fully inhaled and breathed in all life had to offer her. Many people are proponents of the concept that death occurs to teach us life lessons. But no matter how it occurs or under what circumstances, the only lessons to be learned lie in the life that has lived. Every life is special. Every life has a purpose and a meaning, most certainly as Vilia's did. And every life is to be protected and celebrated no matter what. And no doubt, July 17th, 1945 was a day of joy and celebration for parents Ernest Howard and Marie Evelyn Sadler when Vilia blessed this earth in Barnet, Hertfordshire, where they lived at the time. She was the youngest of two, joining older brother Ian. And following her early school years, Vilia entered nursing school at the Barnet General Hospital in 1963. Graduating eventually, I believe in the UK, the program was 4 years, and that would have included living in residency, which was a commitment in and of itself for young women who, as part of the training, lived and worked at the hospital and usually had a roommate in a very tiny shoebox of a room where they did their studies. And it was a big commitment, certainly back in the day when they did need to live together before graduating and working at the hospital. So she graduated and received her nurse's cap because back then they actually did have capping ceremonies. And it was a very special time for these young nurses to receive their cap and diploma, which she did in 1966. And it was while she was undergoing her studies and her training at Barnett General Hospital that she forged what would become a long-term solid friendship with another nurse, Roz. And this was a foreshadowing of their future journeys in their nursing career and as close friends. Following graduation, Canada beckoned in 1967, and new chapters in Vilia's life were to unfold. Initially, she chose Kingston, Ontario, to begin what would become many dedicated, committed years as a nurse. But she probably soon realized, and perhaps for other reasons, that Kingston, Ontario, the winters were not particularly pleasurable back then. So from there, she traveled west, accepting opportunities in Nelson, BC, and Powell River, respectively, continuing to hone her skills and natural ability of compassion and giving of herself. Eventually choosing to settle into Vancouver, Vilia had an opportunity to work at VGH and ultimately ended up working in the special care baby unit and basically neonatal care, which she immediately loved, as did her very young charges, these newborns and just, these little babies that had the privilege of being introduced to Mozart by Vilia for an extra soothing and calming sensory experience. She soon realized, as did these little babies, that this gift of music that Vilia would ensure they were surrounded with was a remarkable experience in their early months. As was shared in a special message by a close nursing friend, Lil Crookdake, Vilia was a truly wonderful person and nurse, always supportive, caring, patient, fun, and a much admired colleague and friend who always put the needs of others before her own. She was a remarkable, selfless person, and it was a privilege to call her a friend. I'm also told that Vilia held and maintained a steadfast belief in providing quality, top-notch patient care and all that involved, right down to organizing and fine-tuning the admission and discharge system at the hospital to ensure continuity and thoroughness in providing excellence in the health care of patients and all their needs. Apparently she was just highly detailed and incredibly organized, and spearheaded this project and fine-tuned it so there was no surprises and there was a complete thorough knowledge of each and every patient that they were dealing with. And these are only a sampling of what I've shared with you of the many messages that were received by the family that shared similar sentiments and reflections of Vilia. Now, as Ian and Jane personally shared with me when we met over this past weekend, so that I could have the opportunity of learning more about Vilia's life, as they shared, she was well known, and all of you know this already, for both her incredible kindness and thoughtfulness. She was of strong character, believed in honesty, and was someone who always took a keen and sincere interest in others. She also fully embraced and walked the talk in terms of maintaining a steadfast, do-it-well attitude in everything she committed herself to, and was certainly had to be a role model in that respect. As Ian and Jane said to me, Vilia absolutely wholeheartedly believed if you're going to do something, do it well and do it to the best of your ability. And I'm sure all of you here this morning, and thanks to all of you for being here and your support and presence, and all those family members or extended family members viewing the service from, pardon me, I'll call it across the pond, can fully attest to the innumerable qualities that Vilia possessed and shared with so many others throughout the course of her life and along her life path. Outside of her dedication to her work, Vilia's great enjoyments and special activities included her love of music. Apparently she was a member of the North Shore Recorder Group. She played the flute and also the piano. She loved connecting with friends, traveling back to the UK to see family whenever she could, and always relished time and care of her beloved pets over the years. And those special little creatures included her canaries, a precious feline, and treasured dog Pixel. But for short periods of true relaxation and indulgence, Vilia thoroughly appreciated and enjoyed her 11's tea and toast time, which, as I understand, it's not quite high tea, but it's you'll all have a chance, of course, to enjoy a 11's tea, coffee, and a treat following the service in her honor. And preferably, she enjoyed this with a little company. In short, a good cup of hot tea, a scone, or a biscuit. Over the course of her life, among enjoying many international travels, Vilia always loved to return to the UK to visit with family and friends, which every few years or so included a planned group family trip to destinations such as Lagarda, Tuscany, and in and around Scotland. She also traveled to Australia and visited the Great Wall of China with Emily, a close friend and colleague. And interestingly, outside of her own journeys and trips back home, from time to time, her own friends from Canada would travel to the UK and were also warmly welcomed by her family for a visit. Now, while it is a true privilege for me to speak about someone's special life, especially when I did clearly not have the privilege of knowing Vilia, the truth of the matter is that no one can share memories and heartfelt remembrances and stories like family and close friends. And that couldn't be more true today. So on that note, I'd firstly like to ask, we'll have the privilege of hearing from Ian, Vilia's brother, followed by close friend Kathy Shorten, and then John Smythe. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, John, who's a former colleague. So Ian, if you would please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I hope you can hear. I can't assess how loud I'm speaking, but just wave your hand if you can't hear me. It's a real tribute to Vilia and very heartwarming to me and the family that so many friends have come to commemorate her life today. I'd like to give a big thank you to Roz and to Emily, and also to the staff at the VGH for their concern and care for Vilia. over all the times that it's been necessary. Thank you too to my daughters for piloting me through the last 3 weeks. Right, about Vilia, I was very excited in 1944 when my parents told me I was going to have a brother or sister. As far as I was concerned, it was going to be a sister. I never thought I might have a brother, and there must have been talk of what her name was to be. Now, in those days, the only audio we had was a sort of wind-up gramophone with shellac records that lasted about 4 or 5 minutes. And one of these was a disc which had the Merry Widow Waltz on one side and Vilia on the other. And apparently I had said, "She will be called Vilia." So that's how the name arose. I can still see this, I can still see this little baby, tiny baby, being laid in the cot when she came home from the maternity hospital. I was rather put out when half an hour later I was whisked off to spend the next 2 weeks with my grandparents, and I wanted to be with my wee sister. Initially, she struggled with a heart problem, which eventually sorted itself out as she grew older, but she became very tired very easily, and for many years she actually had to have a sleep in the afternoon. She was a happy child, and if music was playing, she would sit cross-legged on the floor and rock from side to side in time to the music. She'd sometimes do this when there wasn't any music, and I noticed when I was here in the summer she was still doing this. So some of you may have noticed she was occasionally just doing that. Anyway, in 1950 we had a holiday at our great Aunt Edie's place. She had a shop in a tiny village and had everything in this shop. And we'd been given strict instructions that we were not to ask for sweets. Anyway, it didn't matter too much because every day Auntie Edie gave us a wee paper bag with sweets. Well, every day except one. One day we didn't get any sweets. And about 10 o'clock, Edie came into the house from the shop and she said, "There's a small person walking up and down behind the counter in the shop, out of sight but within earshot, saying quietly, 'I really could eat a bag of sweets.'" Anyway, in the summer of 1992, Pat and I, and with Claire and Ruth, visited Vilia here for the first time, and she'd planned a whole range of activities for us, trip to Vancouver Island, Powell River and so forth, and of course dog walking. Since 2000 I've come over every 2 years, and so I'm glad I was here last June. I'd actually like now to read a letter that we've received from that's my wife's half-sister, Liz. And it runs like this. "Hello, Kirsten. I'm very sorry to hear of Vilia's passing. As a child, I adored her. I think everyone has an older relative that they look up to when they are young. And in my case, it was definitely Vilia. I must have only been about 7 years old, and I'm 60 now, when Vilia and I travelled by coach from London to Edinburgh, that's about 400 miles, to stay with your mum and dad. She was amazing at looking after me and entertaining me on the long journey. She always kept in touch with me over the years and sent me exciting presents and photographs of the animals. Mum and I visited her in Vancouver when we were on an Alaska cruise about 19 years ago. We had an amazing day with her, and although she had changed physically, the vibrant, witty and generous-hearted Vilia that I remembered was just the same. More recently, she made light of her health issues when we corresponded at Christmas. She obviously adored all you girls and delighted in writing about you. Please give my condolences to Jane, Claire, Ruth and your families. I will write to Ian. So, and to finish, I have a letter here written to Vilia by some friends of my father just after he died. "Dear Vilia, we are saddened by Howard's death, for his friendship meant much to us, and we shall miss him. You have been a tower of strength to him during these past weeks, and too at the time of Mary's death. No one could have been more caring and devoted, and we knew the high esteem in which your father held you. Our heartfelt sympathy to you and to your brother and his family. Love from us both, Frank and Edna. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Ian. And just to reflect back on what you shared with Vilia being learning to rock so perfectly in her very early years, it could have had less to do with in addition to the music, as perfecting what she knew would be coming many years down the road for the hundreds of thousands, probably, of little babies she would be rocking. Thank you again. Kathy Shorten. Thank you, Kathy.
Good morning. Vilia was one of my closest friends. I loved her very much. She had many wonderful qualities. She was intelligent and creative. She was also practical and capable. She worked hard and she got things done. Vilia was very kind, and she was a good listener. Actually, she was a great listener. She was wise, and her advice was always good. She was thoughtful and generous. She truly cared about other people and was interested in what they were doing or going through. Vilia was a great comfort to me when my mother passed away. She really knew how to be a good friend. I met Vilia and Rosaline in 1977 when I moved to North Vancouver. Roz and Vilia met in England when they were training to be nurses. They had a great friendship. They were more like sisters, really. They shared many interests, and they often traveled together. Fortunately for me, they welcomed me into their group. We got together often, almost every weekend. We had dinner, then we'd play skip-bo or tile rummy, and talk and laugh. Sometimes we laughed until it was hard to breathe. As Vilia's health deteriorated, Roz did more and more for her, driving, shopping, cooking, and taking care of Pixel. Roz is still taking good care of dear Pixel. Vilia had a good sense of humor. The day before she died, I visited her at VGH. Her dear friend Emily was encouraging her to drink some Ensure. Vilia made a face and said, "Yes, miss." Then they both grinned at each other. Emily was a very close friend. They got together often and sometimes traveled together. Emily really helped Vilia a lot in this last difficult time. She was the one who recommended the 3-wheel walker, which Vilia found indispensable. Emily went to VGH often to help Vilia and her family. Vilia was a very good musician. She played a number of instruments, and for many years she was a faithful member of 3 recorder groups. As her eyesight got worse, Roz or another friend, Benta, would drive her there. Benta and Vilia were very close friends. They got together often and went to many concerts. Benta is also one of Pixel's favorite dog walkers. Vilia loved animals. She had many pets over the years. I remember her much-loved cats, Flugie, Babs, Boo, and Marmalade. For the last 11 years, her dog Pixel was her special friend. As Vilia's health deteriorated, her neighbors helped her more and more. Vilia said she didn't know how she would manage without George and Robin upstairs. Her neighbors Pat, Richard, Irina, and Barry were also very kind to her. Vilia treasured her long friendship with Marg, who lives in Powell River. They visited each other often and kept in touch faithfully. Vilia knitted little sweaters for babies in Africa, and Marg helped her with that project. Kian came to help Vilia around the house, and before long, another friendship developed. Vilia inspired Kian to take courses and become a certified care aide. Vilia really appreciated all the cheerful help Kian and Tia provided. The owners of the gluten-free bakery were also kind to Vilia. If one of us could not pick up her bread order, they would deliver it to her door. This is remarkable because they don't usually deliver. That was just for Vilia. Vilia was kind to people, and people were kind to her. She loved, and in turn, she was surrounded by love. She had a very good life despite her health issues. My friend in Montreal only met Vilia a few times, but she described her perfectly in a recent email. She said, Vilia was a lovely, kind, and courageous woman. So, Vilia, thank you for being a friend. We love you, and I truly believe you still love us.
It's wonderful memories, Kathy, and it's not it takes a lot of strength to share these stories at a time like this, so thank you so much. John, if we could have the privilege of hearing from you, please. John is a former colleague at Vilia's.
Good morning. I started working in Vancouver in the special care nursery in '82, and that's when I met Vilia. At that time, she was one of the senior nurses, a team leader, and these are the people who really keep things running smoothly. So as a still learning doctor at that time, I was really very appreciative of their help. Vilia was a very experienced nurse. She knew her stuff really well. She was very well liked by the families of the babies she took care of, by the nurses and medical staff and others that we all worked together with. Now, the early 80s was the dawn of the computer age. When I arrived at the hospital, there were no computers. Well, there may have been one or two hiding away somewhere, but things changed, of course, very rapidly. And the role of the computer in every workplace exploded, and computers were seen as an important part of the care we delivered to our patients. And Vilia was an early adapter of this technology. For the remainder of her career, she ran so efficiently and quietly what was an important part of the whole system. She, in fact, ran a miniature health records department right on the spot in the nursery. So she learned about computers and how they worked, but she required more than technical skills to do this job, and she was very good at cajoling the medical staff to get them to complete their summaries on time, and sort of placating the infant transport team who were, where is the summary? We have to have the summary to take this baby out. Everybody, nobody could get upset with Vilia. That was an impossibility. Everybody loved her. She maintained a database for administrative purposes and for research, and that was a very valuable contribution to the running of the nursery. And she kept the computer programs going by nursing them along when they were well past their best by date. And she helped to develop new programs as they became available. And all this was done with the quiet efficiency that was Vilia's hallmark. And in this work, she was supported by a number of, they were all women who had been nurses, and many of whom are here today. Shirley, Carol, Catherine, Patty, Valerie, were the ones that I remember off the top of my head. And I understand that they continue to meet socially, and I'm not sure when they last met, but they used to meet regularly. Vilia loved to talk about her family, especially her nieces. And I know that they visited her, and she loved to visit them. And when, even before she was traveling was not really feasible, she loved to communicate with Skype or FaceTime or whatever it was. I think it was Skype then. And she loved to tell me what was going on in their lives. As you've already heard, Vilia was an animal lover, a sort of a Saint Francis to many animals. And I understand that Pixie, her last dog, is now in the capable hands of Roz. Some years ago, Vilia had a health crisis and ended up on a ventilator. And the canaries were removed from her home because of the concern that they might have contributed some bird virus that made her contribute, that was the cause of her lung disease. And Emily, who couldn't be here today, just reminded me that when she was recovering from that illness, Vilia said that her bird vet had come to VGH to visit her. And then she added, with that twinkle in her eye, "But my GP hasn't been yet." Vilia, as you've also heard, enjoyed making music, and I didn't know she was a member of so many recorder ensembles, but if there are any members of those groups present, I'd love to make yourselves known to me, because I know that was very important for her, to her. And I know that I don't know whether she had played violin or wanted to start playing violin because she inherited my violin, but I'm pretty sure that she made a better job of it than I had. And thank you, Ian, for sharing the story about how she got named. I thought that her parents had some insights into how she was going to develop and had given her a name with musical associations, but I guess it was a name with a musical association for you. I of course knew the song, not all the words of it, but it was a song that had been popular back in the days, in the early part of the century, actually. And when I would sing a few bars of Vilia, oh Vilia, in her presence, she would just smile. She may have been totally irritated by me, but she would never show it. I found a little verse by Scottish poet Robert Burns, which I think just fit Vilia, they were written for a male friend of Robbie Burns, and so I hope you'll forgive me for changing the language into the female gender to fit Vilia. It's entitled Epitaph on a Friend. An honest woman here lies at rest, as e'er God with his image blessed. The friend of all, the friend of truth, the friend of age and guide of youth. Few hearts like hers with virtue warmed, few heads with knowledge so informed. If there's another world, she lives in bliss. If there is none, she made the best of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, on behalf of all of us here. And I thought your short rendition of Vilia was quite impressive, actually. Thank you so much. And to each one of you, Kathy and Ian, for all that you shared in remembrance and tribute to Vilia. And make no mistake, as I said before, it's not an easy task at a time like this, and it takes a lot of personal strength and courage after losing someone within such a short period of time. Yet at the same time, in hearing what we've heard from Ian and Kathy and John and what you already know and have shared and will continue to share with each other about Vilia, it helps fill that immense void of loss for everyone. For some things in life, there are simply no words needed, but rather your own personal remembrances and the gift of silent reflection through photographic memories and music. Often this says it all. So we'll be doing just that by taking a few quiet minutes of respectful silence to reflect back on special chapters of Vilia's life, accompanied by the music. Accompanied by the music she loved. Thank you. Well, thank you to the family for those amazing visuals and photographs, and the music was, there's no words for the choices of music that accompanied what we just saw. And thank God for memories and photographs, because these are two things in life that can never be taken away from us or extinguished, and remain there for us to draw on when we need some healing, if not uplifting moments of remembrance and positive comfort. We know people are taken away from us, but these are two things that remain, that help sustain us at a time like this. So thank you again for the efforts of the family in putting this together. Human nature is simply, we're never ready to let someone go, no matter the age or the circumstances or how well prepared we think we may be for an imminent death. And the loss is real, and the pain is real, and it's experienced differently by each individual based on the relationship they've had with that person. And there's simply no right time when it comes to farewells on this realm, and it's just one closure in life that will always remain a challenging, if not painful, transition for the most part, even when we know that person. And today, that person is Vilia, has lived their life to the very best of their ability. Today, we have come to share with Vilia's family and friends their loss of this unique person and woman who held so many roles in the course of her 73 years, and to provide sincere, caring support to one another during this time. Acknowledging the loss of Vilia, someone you've all known, loved, respected, and appreciated in your own way, is as important as this special day of tribute and remembrance to her life legacy. On behalf of the family, allow me to express sincere thanks again for your presence here to honor and pay tribute to the well-lived and remarkably full life of Vilia Sadler, who will never be forgotten in your hearts or your minds. And again, let us give sincere thanks and gratitude for her life, and that all that she contributed to each one of your lives, and has left such a great deal behind to be remembered, honored, and treasured. And always, always being the best she could be at whatever she did. And for many, that is an art in and of itself. To embrace life, live it to the best of one's ability, and know how to live in the moment. And it's something that many don't attain if they live to 100 or beyond. And this was something Vilia innately understood. Appreciation for life. And as you leave here today, once again, I underscore gratefulness, which is the last thing, and it's not a natural emotion that we feel when we've lost someone. But it is still, I think, important to remember, because all of you somehow, with Vilia's presence and her friendship, however that has happened to each of you over the years, has influenced your own life, and very differently than had she not had a presence at all. And no one could attest to that more than her family, extended family, and close friends. Carrying her in your hearts and minds, let us leave here in comfort and peace, assured that life is still good and will go on. In closing, I'd like to share this following special piece at the family's request. I should note that it was translated, I believe, by Claire, in the UK, a niece of Vilia's, so it has been transferred by Claire from German to English. And you will see it on your service cards, and it is entitled Slumber Now. Slumber, weary eyes, fall gently and blissfully closed. World, I'm not staying here anymore. I have no part in you. This soul could be suited to this place, but here I have to suffer. But there, I'll look to there. Sweet peace and quiet rest. I did want to mention, and I'm sure you all know this, that you'll all be gathering together shortly following the committal portion, which is brief, the committal portion of the service, for 11's light refreshments in Vilia's memory, which is a time she so loved and appreciated and enjoyed herself. And gathering and connecting together afterwards as family and friends to continue to share stories, memories, and remembrances of Vilia is just as important as the service we've shared here today in her memory and honor. And I'm sure this is what she would have both welcomed and appreciated. And for those in the UK, given the time change, it may be a spot of sherry or something else that Vilia enjoyed at that time of the day in the UK. And I also want to once again extend sincere thanks to Ian and Jane for taking the time to meet with me over the weekend. As I've said earlier, it's a great honor for me to be able to speak about someone's life, but I cannot do that without family involvement. So thank you, and to Kristen, Claire, and Ruth in the UK, and for all of the rest of the family back there that have helped participate in this tribute to Vilia today, and also to our speakers. Now, as I said, just in the next few minutes, our attendants will be coming forward to guide the committal process, which is escorting Vilia from the chapel. And when that is complete, if you could, everyone could just remain seated, if you would, for a short bit. And when that is completed, our director will come forward to escort the immediate family through to the reception area, after which you're all welcome to join with them there. Blessings to you all. Safe travels to those of you who have come from afar, and take care of one another. Sometimes it's hard to remember not to take life for granted because we know it's very fragile. So thank you all again. It's been a privilege.
up on when she's away. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. She's always gone too long. Anytime she goes away. Wonder this time where she's gone. Wonder if she's gonna stay. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. And this house is ain't no home. Anytime she goes away.
All of you feel free to go into the reception area as you wish. If you'd like to sit quietly for a few minutes, that's fine.